meeting. And I just had a signal to make sure that we were on board and stuff like that. And we wanted to make sure that everybody has kind of checked in. If you are someone that wants to speak, you would have had to sign in the back over there. Before we get started, I'd like all of us to have a moment of silence, especially for those people that are now suffering, being devastated by Hurricane Beryl. So if you don't mind, 1 moment of silence, please. All right, thank you very much. Just keep them in your thoughts and prayers. They all need it. All right, first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a roll call, just so you know of all the people that are here. What you will see there, we have 2 gentlemen that are alternates. They have now been on the board to form the quorum and are able to make and extend their votes on any of the issues that will come up, just so you know that. All right, we'll start from left to right.
Martin Powell.
Frank McElroy.
Rondo Hayward.
Freddie Degollado.
And of course, Richard Jovett is here. Okay. All right, the first thing we want to do is see if there are any residents that would want to speak. Is there anyone signed up to speak? Okay. So at this point, we will move on. And the first item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and that is the minutes for the March 6th, 2024 regular meeting. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at that? Okay, if no comments, a motion to approve.
So moved.
Okay.
I'll second.
Second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. It's been seconded. Take a vote from left to right, please.
Aye.
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 Aye, and the motion carries. The minutes are accepted. All right. Again, this item number 5 is a public hearing, and at this point, we will hold a public hearing if there is anyone that has been listed. This is strictly for the Board of Adjustment. Now, the items that are on the agenda, if you wish to speak on one of those items, there will be the ability of public hearing after the staff puts out their comments. So you're welcome to do it then. If you want to do it now, that's up to you, but I think it might be better on the items as they are placed. All right? Thank you very much. Okay. Move on to item A, ordinance 22S44, Schertz Station PDD, Area 1, Section D, transportation to reduce the landscaping requirements along IH-35 North Access Road from 15 feet to 10 feet, located northeast of the intersection of IH-35 North Access Road and Cibolo Valley Drive, specifically known as portion of Guadalupe. Property identification number is 197632, the city of Schertz, Guadalupe County, Texas. Please.
Good evening, Board. PLVAR 2024-0138, a variance from Ordinance 22S44, Schertz Station PDD, Daisy Marquez, planner. So here is the subject property outlined in green. Here to the north, we have I-35 North Access Road, and here to the left, we have Cibolo Valley Drive. And the subject property is a total of approximately 75 acres that is currently zoned Planned Development District. So again, here's the subject property outlined in yellow, and you can see more clearly Cibolo Valley Drive, IH-35. Here's the rest of that property that is part of that larger development, also known as the Schertz Station development, part of that same PDD. We also have here Evo, our movie theater. And on June 21st, we sent out a total of 5 public hearing notices. We received 2 in favor. And on June 19th, we published in the San Antonio Express newspaper. So Merit, on behalf of Schertz Station LTD, has requested a variance to Ordinance 22S44, which is a Schertz Station PDD, Area 1, Section D transportation, which requires a minimum 15-foot landscape buffer along IH-35 North Access Road. And the requested variance is to allow the landscape buffer along IH-35 North Access Road to be reduced to 10 feet. And ultimately, if approved, the variance would allow the landscape buffer width for all properties within the Schertz Station PDD in Area 1 and along IH-35 North Access Road to be 10 feet with no changes requested to the required tree planting amounts. So a zone change was approved in December 2022 with Ordinance 22S44 to Planned Development District PDD. And this PDD is the Schertz Station PDD, which consists of 4 development areas that include commercial and retail along the thoroughfares and multifamily rental units. So areas 1, 2, and 4 contain all commercial and retail, which is seen here in the yellow, the blue, and the green. And area 3 is the multifamily component here in the red. So the requested variance is for a portion of area 1, specifically proposed lots 1 through 7, which are all along IH-35 North Access Road. So since the approval of Ordinance 22S44, the applicant has gone through the development process. So some of the development applications that they already have approved and ready are the preliminary plat certification, the preliminary plat formal approval, final plat certification for the multifamily portion, final plat approval for the multifamily section, final plat recordation of the multifamily portion, site plan certification of the multifamily portion, site plan approval of the multifamily portion, building permit approval and release of the multifamily portion, final plat certification of the commercial portion, final plat approval of the commercial portion, site plan certification for commercial lots 5, 6, 7, and 8, site plan approval for commercial lots 5, 6, 7, and 8, and then the building permits for commercial lots 5, 6, 7, and 8 are waiting on recordation of the final plat for the commercial portion for them to be released. And here is a non-residential development flow map, kind of just showing you that the commercial portion for lots 5, 6, 7, and 8 they're ready. They're ready to be released to them with recordation of the final plat. So as the applicant was submitting applications and going through the development process, the Texas Department of Transportation is simultaneously going through the beginning phases of the IH-35 Northeast expansion, also known as NEXT project. The subject property is affected by the North project portion of the I-35 NEXT project that is still in the design phases as per the Texas Department of Transportation website. And here is that North project area of the text on X. And as per the letter of intent and variance justification form, the applicant was using the base survey for all development applications used in the zone change application in 2022. And with the submittal of the final plat application for the commercial portion, the applicant discovered that the base survey used for the zone change and all other development applications did not account for additional right-of-way acquisitions made by TxDOT after initial acquisitions by TxDOT at the subject property. And the updated survey moves the TxDOT right-of-way line approximately 5 to 6 feet back into the subject property. And although right-of-way changes do not severely impact the plat applications, it does impact the site plan applications that were already certified and approved for the commercial portion. The Schertz Station PDD Area 1 Section D transportation is written as follows. Landscape buffer. A minimum 15-foot wide landscape buffer shall be provided adjacent to any public right-of-way. Trees shall be planted at an average density of 1 tree per 20 linear feet of the street frontage. And the landscape buffer shall require an irrigation system and shall be maintained by the property owner. With the increase of the TxDOT right-of-way, the applicant is still able to provide 10 feet of landscape buffer within their property and with all required tree plantings. And as per the provided variance exhibits, the total landscape width from I-35 North Access Road to the proposed development parking will still be at a minimum of 30 feet in width and will meet the intent of the Unified Development Code. The variance for the landscape buffer is being requested because the City of Schertz measures the landscape buffer of any proposed development from the property line back and not from the right-of-way. So here's the exhibit that was submitted with the application. The black arrow demonstrates where the previous proposed TxDOT right-of-way line was, and the red is where the new one is. And this exhibit shows you how the proposed sod is essentially going to stay the same. It's the TxDOT right-of-way line that's moving back. So when we look at variances, staff looks at UDC Article 3, Section 2134B for the criteria of approval. And 1, the requested variance does not violate the intent of this UDCRS amendments. So as per UDC Article 14, Section 2114.3, additional design requirements, the purpose of the additional design requirements is to ensure uniform and quality development along certain streets to create attractive environments compatible with businesses and residential dwellings. Ordinance 22-44, Schertz Station PDD Area 1, Section D, Transportation, requires a minimum 15-foot wide landscape buffer adjacent to any public right-of-way. The applicant is proposing a reduction in the minimum landscape buffer width to 10 feet for the proposed Schertz Station subdivision lots 1 through 7, block 1. And although a reduction in the landscape buffer width is being requested for the proposed lots 1 through 7 along IH-35 North Access Road, the required tree plantings will still be provided at 1 tree per 20 linear feet. And although there have been additional TxDOT right-of-way acquisitions at the subject property, the landscaping provided from IH-35 North Access Road to the subject property parking will not be reduced. And as per the variance exhibits provided by the applicant, the property boundaries are moving toward the proposed buildings, which is where the proposed development loses 5 feet of landscape buffer that was on their property. And if the variance is approved, the landscape buffering that was being proposed will still be provided, but 5 feet will be within TxDOT property. And due to the subject property still proposing to provide 1 tree per 20 linear feet and the landscape buffer remaining the same from IH-35 North Access Road to the proposed development parking, the requested variance to reduce the landscape buffer to 10 feet on the subject property does not violate the intent of the Unified Development Code or its amendments. 2, special conditions of the restricted area topography or physical features exist that are peculiar to the subject parcel of land in and are not applicable to other parcels of land in the same zoning district. There are no special conditions in the restricted area topography or physical features that exist that are unique to the subject property that do not apply to other parcels of land in the same zoning district. However, the subject property is at the intersection of IH-35 Next Central and North projects with the proposed elevated lanes access point at the intersection of TxDOT IH-35 North Access Road and Cibolo Valley Drive. And here this yellow dot is that elevated lane access point, and that's also the same corner that abuts the property directly. The hardship is in no way the result of the applicant's own actions. So the hardship is not a result of the applicant's own actions, and as per the letter of intent submitted by the applicant, the current plat applications and site plans use a base survey that did not account for additional right-of-way acquisitions that TxDOT made. And the survey was the same one used in 2022 for Ordinance 22-44, the approved zone change request. TxDOT has been acquiring right-of-way along IH-35 North Access Road for the I-35 Northeast Expansion Next project, and TxDOT acquired right-of-way from the subject property to accommodate their project, thus reducing the available acreage and moving the property lines of the subject property. And at another point, TxDOT acquired additional right-of-way from the subject property and moved the property lines back again, which was not accounted for during the development process, as TxDOT informed the applicant and made them aware of the discrepancy just recently. And as per the letter of intent, the applicant became aware of the additional acquired right-of-way before attempt of recordation of the proposed final plat that would record the Schertz Station subdivision proposed lots 1 through 10 and 12, Block 1. And additionally, the applicant has a certified preliminary plat, final plat, and certified and approved site plans for the proposed commercial lots 5 through 8 that are located along I-35 North Access Road. And when the applicant became aware of the base survey error, they immediately notified staff and demonstrated that although the property lines were changing, the landscaping along I-35 was not changing. And 4, the interpretation of the provisions in this UDC or any amendments thereto would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district that comply with the same provisions. The applicant submitted plat and site plan applications based on a survey they believe was still correct. And when the applicant became aware of additional acquisitions and their base survey being incorrect, they immediately notified staff and demonstrated that the purpose and intent of the additional design requirements for properties along I-35 North Access Road were still being met. And if the requested variance is not approved, the applicant will need to go through the development process again. And this would include resubmitting plat certification and formal applications, site plan certification and formal applications, and building permit applications, which would cause significant delays in development and the potential loss of future tenants. And allowing this variance does not deprive the applicants of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district. So staff recommends approval of PLVAR 2024-0138 to allow all properties within Area 1 of the Schertz Station PDD located along IH-35 North Access Road to reduce their landscape buffer width from 15 feet to 10 feet. And then the applicant is here with their own presentation.
Okay, at this time, just to let you know that since this is a public portion of the hearing, anyone that wants to make comment or say anything in regards to this is welcome to do that now. So the public hearing is now open. Please make sure you state your name and who you are so that we make sure we get it all down correctly. Thanks.
Absolutely. Hi, my name is Will Collins, and I'm the CEO of American Commercial Real Estate, and we are the developer of Schertz Station. We have a presentation to go through, but Ms. Marquez did a great job of walking through the situation, so I don't want to be redundant or repeating things she's already stated. So really just I want to express my gratitude for y'all taking the time to go through this variance request. Appreciate staff taking the time to present the situation for us, and really want to emphasize the hardship that this would cause on Schertz Station if we were not to receive approval from you all today. We've made a lot of commitments to a lot of tenants, a lot of national tenants, restaurants and retailers about delivery dates of when we would deliver these buildings, or in the case of a large anchor tenant, deliver a land parcel to them. Having to go through the entitlement process again, starting over, would delay, in our calculation, at a minimum of 3 months, if not longer. And that would put a lot of our deals in jeopardy and would put us in default with a lot of the tenants that we've already made commitments to. It might cause several of them to really evaluate whether or not they would come to the city of Schertz. So the surveyor made a mistake, not with malicious intent, pure, just an honest mistake. And as Ms. Marquez said, as soon as we found out the mistake was made, we alerted staff. The city of Schertz has been a great partner for us on this project, and in turn, we want to be a great partner by bringing up issues like this as immediately as we find them out. So I'm here today to implore your empathy in understanding our situation and the profound impact that not approving this variance request would have on the overall project. Thank you.
You're welcome. there anyone else that would like to speak?
Ralph Gutierrez, 1016 Sewer Tree, Mayor, City of Schertz. You know, Merit has been working very hard to work on this beautiful property that will soon be our retail space and what we called, over in Live Oak and Selma, their forum. This is ours. This is our baby. And we worked very hard to try to get some of these retailers to come in. I met some of them, and we're looking forward to that. But as Will said, this was a mistake that was done, but not by them, by TxDOT, because the mistake was also done over in Bussey's. They moved the fence line, and all of a sudden they had to move the fence line the second time. So the hardship was caused by TxDOT basically requesting more right-of-way. We're anxiously waiting for, for the dirt to stop moving and the spaces to be filled. And we're looking forward to that. And I just want to offer my support for their request and hope that you all see it a positive way so that we can go ahead and continue with the construction. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, is there anyone else? All right. And going once, twice. All right. At this time, we've opened up to the board, and if you have any questions and comments, Mr. Haywood?
TxDOT, I think they're going to have Texas under construction for the next 20 years. It is what it is. Just for the record, I'm empathetic with you, but I ask this just so we have it for the future. A rough estimated cost of doing all this over again, just so it's on record. That's one question. The second question is, there's going to be housing there. Does it potentially fall in the category of workforce housing?
Tangential aspects. I would probably caution, though, that we really need to stick to the germane elements of the variance request. I would hate for someone to get the impression that whether or not it's workforce housing or not on a separate project weighed into the variance whatsoever. I mean, I can certainly appreciate the interest, but again, probably best to steer clear of that with regard to the waiver request, if that makes sense.
Okay, can he answer the cost thing?
So I don't think this is a cost-based waiver request.
No, I'm trying to get, if we didn't do it, I'm apt to approve it. I just want on record how much it's costing to go through this whole process, money and time all over again.
Yeah, so I'm not, again, to be clear, I'm not sure the cost is germane to the waiver request. Certainly I think the applicant has spoken about the impacts of not getting the waiver to their project, but it's not a cost-based waiver request. So again, I appreciate why it may be interesting. I would steer clear of those sort of questions,
okay,
if you might. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, for the city, just to clarify something, I don't know if I misheard or I wrote down that the city measures the buffer from the property line, not the right-of-way. Is that what I heard correctly, or?
So when it comes to site plan review, let me pull up the exhibit. We measure it from the subject property's property line back. So that's why instead of 15, it's going to be 10. Whereas here, it looks like there's more than 10 feet of landscape buffer being provided, but it's TxDOT right-of-way technically.
So I think, apologize, Mr. McElroy, maybe Daisy was trying to maybe misspoke in particular. So the landscape buffer is measured from the right-of-way line, which is the property line. They're one and the same thing, as opposed to from the pavement which is what I think she meant to say. So we don't measure it from the pavement of the frontage road. We measure the landscape buffer from the right-of-way line / property line into the property. And so while you may sit out there in your car on the frontage road and look back when this is built and say, well, they're like 30, 35 feet, technically it doesn't meet because that landscape area isn't entirely on the property is the issue. Yeah.
And it's the city's understanding at this time that the right-of-way isn't necessarily part of the road. It might be a grassy area or something like that.
That's right. So typically what you have on streets such as Schertz Parkway out front, you'll have the pavement of the street, and then you'll typically have on a typical road 10, 12 feet of area that's covered by the sidewalk, some grass, things like that, that's within the right-of-way as well. Often there are utilities located in there. And so again, people often get the false impression that, oh, this is an entirely the landscape buffer private property, but it's that parkway that's creating, in part the issue here.
Okay, and then just one other question. A mistake has been mentioned a couple of different times. I don't know that I'm seeing it as a mistake, that rather it's just kind of a change of circumstances, if that might be.
I think that's fair. I mean, I think what certainly this is an unusual one because of the timing of the project moving forward, the initial submittal of the applications, the TxDOT right-of-way acquisition, and to some degree even the state of flux of the TxDOT plans. I think you're right. It was inherently a mistake that was made in not kind of catching that things had changed. Going forward, if you will, is what led us to be where we are. I think from a staff perspective, it's a unique situation, that where you don't get this tied to everybody else, thus the waiver request. And I think the irony when staff looked at it too is if they had gotten some of these things approved a short time earlier and then the right-of-way dedication occurred, that would be perfectly fine. It's sort of the timing and not catching things, but the effect would have been the same if the right-of-way dedication had come in slightly later. And so I think from a staff perspective, where we have these right-of-way takes occurring when a project is moving forward, it's really hard to predict and plan. Either they sort of err on the side of caution and give up more land not knowing the timing, and thus the justification in this case.
One other question that occurred to me now, I'm curious about the domino effect in the instance that we may not approve this. Essentially, would it shrink the parking lot?
It's probably more significant than that. I think the applicant kind of understated the challenge this creates because typically what's happened, and maybe alluding to your point, we had a larger parcel of land based on what was the depth of that from the frontage road back at the time. They started subdividing. So again, the multifamily piece up at the southeast corner was split off. Rips Chrysler, the road on the city's thoroughfare plan was outlined based on that. And then this property owner then created their lotting pattern based on that distance. And so what would happen is if the parking lot shrank, they likely now wouldn't meet the parking standards of the city, and the sites don't work. So you're correct. It is a series of dominoes that falls that I think, as the applicant indicated and tried to be brief, the whole project, the way they've laid it out, doesn't work and really significantly disrupts the site. This is not a minor issue. As they've said, it gets worse for them in that they've made commitments to tenants, to folks coming in, puts them in default for that as well. And so, yeah, it's not like, because that would be the initial. The initial staff sit down and say, all right, how do we fix this? Work with them and say, well, we adjust this here, we adjust this here. Those options don't appear to be available. We could not find a way to fix this, even with what I would say are moderately significant changes. It really is a drastic redesign on the whole project, which then, as you know, from doing some of this, throws the viability of the whole thing into being. You know, they likely purchased the property with the assumption that, okay, we can get this many square feet, this will generate this much in tenants, and da-da-da-da-da. And when that sort of falls apart, the whole thing becomes a challenge.
And if you could speak to one other thing, the 15 feet requirement, if you know, in the UDC, is the genesis of that purely aesthetic? Is there a safety element to it?
No, there's not a safety element. It purely is aesthetic. It's this community, we set our standard look for a typical site is 20 feet.
Yes.
It's a 20-foot normally. So normally what we want is a 20-foot landscape buffer on the property. And that's intended to assume that the amount of parkway, that grass off property in the right-of-way, will vary. In some cases, it's very little. Others, it's 10, 12 feet. It's just to say this is our minimum. But again, as much as we've tried to amend the UDC to account for these varied circumstances, for instance, there's special provisions in there when you have utility easements over that landscape buffer, which wouldn't allow things to be planted there. We've made some adjustments. But again, we can't account for every circumstance. And this is one of those where like, yep. And I think staff's initial reaction was then to start thinking about all the other projects we have up and down 35 with these right-of-way takes and starting to check those to make sure we didn't have issues, or that we don't have issues kind of going forward. Because again, even the last TxDOT call I was on for the 35 Next project, they were talking about adjustments having to be made for some utility things and whatnot.
Thank you.
I had a question, Mr. James. So the quote unquote, like the 15 feet to the 10 feet designation, has TxDOT kind of signed off on that already in terms of the right of way? I mean, they're not going to come back and say, well, you know what, we really need X.
So I would say this, and this is a bit of my kind of comment before. Until this is done, it's sort of not done. And until even I would say, despite finalizing the plans, and even until the utilities are all relocated, and until they start construction, you never know what you'll find, right? I mean, that's one of the challenges. And you read about this in San Antonio, for example, the St. Mary Street project. They went out and they started finding stuff that they hadn't anticipated finding, and that created changes. So it is quite possible that something occurs on the 35 project to cause additional right-of-way dedication. As many of you may know, the FM 1103 project was, I would say, paused or stalled because of issues with private utility relocations that didn't match with things that is causing a redesign. I'm not sure if that triggered additional right-of-way or additional easements. But again, from a city perspective, when we do projects, till it's done, it's sort of not done. You never know what you run into. But I don't think in this location that this waiver impacts the TxDOT project at all. I mean, if this variance being granted creates this huge issue for TxDOT because of a problem, likely TxDOT has bigger problems up and down a section.
But just a real quick question based on just exactly what you said. Assuming that, you know, this is all approved, have we already notified TxDOT that in the event of approval, this is what happens?
No, not necessarily. We don't typically notify TxDOT of it. Again, on the last call, they've indicated they've gotten everything they need for it. So they don't anticipate need anymore. My comment was simply, till it's done, it's not done. You never know what you'll get. But the reality is TxDOT is dealing with the situations up and down this however many mile stretch they deal with. And so again, I think from a staff perspective, we don't anticipate it creating a problem. I mean, you know, worst case scenario would be they need to acquire right-of-way up to the edge of that parking. But again, they've got issues with utilities and things like that, so I don't think that's likely to happen.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, at this time, I'll accept the motion. McElroy?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to approve.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. McElroy? All right. Since I have a motion and a second, we will start the vote from left to right, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. The motion is passed. Everything is acceptable. Thank you very much. Item number B, which is the PL variance R202-40139, conduct a public hearing and consider a request for a variance to ordinance 07S14A, Verde Enterprises Business Park, PDD, Section 6, amendment to sign standards to allow properties within the Verde Enterprise Business Park, PDD, to utilize the provisions of Article 11, Signs and Advertising of the City of Schertz Unified Development Code, UDC, as amended, known as Comel Property Identification Numbers 361995, 385226, 371452, and 383085, and Guadalupe Property Identification Numbers 137506, 171708, 64652, 64735, 13507, 144955, 171706, 199144, 199145, 186060, and a portion of 186056, 186055, 131217, 131215, 171710, 171709, 148342, 191853, 145676, 148341, 134227, 134405, 134404, 166838, 166839, 166876, 191853, City of Schertz, Comel, and Guadalupe County, Texas. Whew. Okay. Again, this is going to be a public hearing. Once the staff is done, we will open it up for a public report on this.
Good evening again, board. I apologize for all those parcel ID numbers. PLVAR 2024-0139, variance from ordinance 7S14A, Verde Enterprise Park PDD. Verde Enterprise Park PD, approximately 210 acres, Daisy Marquez, planner. Here is the subject property, which is approximately 210 acres of land located generally at the northeast corner of Schertz Parkway and IH-35 North Access Road. So to the north of the subject property, we have right-of-way and manufacturing district light, which is Lookout Road and Enterprise Industrial Park. And then to the south, we have IH-35 North Access Road and some portion of property zone General Business District. To the east, we have General Business District and Manufacturing District Light, which is commercial and industrial developments. And then to the west is outside of city limits, which is the city of Selma. So on June 21st, we sent out 51 public hearing notices, and as of 4 p.m. today, we have actually 2 in favor. And on June 19, 2024, we published a notice in the San Antonio Express. So the City of Schertz Planning Division is requesting a variance on behalf of all properties within the Verde Enterprise Business Park PDD, as described in Ordinance 7S14A, to utilize the City of Schertz Unified Development Code Article 11, Signs and Advertising, as amended. So the Verde Enterprise Business Park PDD, also known as Ordinance 7S14A, was approved in 2007, and under Section 2 General Development Standards, the PDD stipulates, as seen below, unless otherwise specified herein, all future development on the property shall be governed by the terms of the UDC in effect of the effective date of the zoning ordinance. So this statement restricts the development within the Verde Enterprise Business Park PDD to the UDC exactly as it was adopted in 2007. And the UDC that was being used in 2007 was adopted with Ordinance 96S28 in September of 1996. So Section 9, signs of the 96 UDC was amended twice with Ordinance 2S02 in February 2002 and Ordinance 6S29 in June of 2006. And although there were major UDC updates in 2009, all development within the Verde Enterprise Business Park PDD is restricted to the 96 UDC if a section is not amended by the PDD specifically. And since 2013, there have been a total of 8 sign variances that have come to the Board of Adjustment and were approved within the Verde Enterprise Park Plan Development District. And all variances were approved on the basis that the proposed signs met the current UDC sign regulations at that time. And here's just a table showing you the meeting date that it went to the Board of Adjustment, the variance application, and then what sign they were requesting a variance for at that time. So again, here's just an exhibit showing you which variance it was and which property was requesting that variance in Verde. So when staff evaluates variance requests, we look to UDC Article 3, Section 2134B. 1, the requested variance does not violate the intent of the UDC or its amendments. The requested variance would allow all subject properties within the Verde Enterprise Park PDD to utilize the City of Schertz Unified Development Code Article 11, signs and advertising as amended. This does not violate the intent of the UDC or its amendments, as it would require all properties within the Verde Enterprise Business Park PDD to utilize the same sign standards as all other properties within the City of Schertz with straight zoning. 2, special conditions of the restricted area, topography, or physical features exist that are peculiar to the subject parcel of land and are not applicable to other parcels of land in the same zoning district. So the properties within the Verde Enterprise Business Park PDD are currently subject to Plan Development District sign regulations, which only allow for smaller and stricter sign regulations than what is presently permitted in Article 11, signs and advertising of the Unified Development Code. Additionally, staff has received frequent requests for development within the Verde Enterprise Business Park PDD to meet the current Unified Development Code Article 11 signs and advertisings as amended, as it is more clear and consistent with current development. 3, the hardship is in no way the result of the applicant's own actions. So the hardship is not a result of the applicant's own actions. The Plan Development District was established for these properties in 2007, and all development applications have been held to the PDD standards, except for the sign variances that this board has granted. Sign variances for properties in the Verde Enterprise Business Park PDD were approved in 2013, 2015, 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2023 for a total of 8 sign variances. 4, the interpretation of the provisions in this UDC or any amendments thereto would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district that comply with the same provisions. The interpretation of the provisions in this UDC or any amendments would not deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district that comply with the same provisions. And if this variance is granted, then all properties within the Verde Enterprise Business Park PDD will be held to the sign standards of the Unified Development Code Article 11, signs and advertising as amended. And these are the same standards that all other properties within the City of Schertz are held to. So staff recommends approval of PLVAR 2024-0139 to allow the utilization of the Unified Development Code Article 11, signs and advertising as amended in the Verde Enterprise Park Plan Development District.
Thank you.
And then there is no applicant because staff is the applicant.
Okay, since there isn't anything, are there any comments and questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I've got a few. And thank you, you clarified the very first question that I was going to ask was the city is the applicant in this. There's an issue that, and I've been here probably for every single one of those variances, is that it's not that was a very common thing that's gone on over the last decade. However, why are we asking for a blanket variance when council can change the provisions of the UDC that would include all of this particular area?
So the Verde PDD, as it is written, it specifically amends the sign section of the UDC, but in addition to that, it wants people to specifically use the 96 UDC as it was in 2007. So there are provisions of the sign ordinance in the Verde PDD that are not listed, that are not amended in the PDD, so they have to refer to the 96 UDC. So it's not even referring to Article 11 as it is now, as we would for other PDDs. So it's kind of two parts. It's the PDD amended parts of the sign ordinance, but on top of that, we're using a very old UDC that we don't even use now, and we keep a copy of it just for the Verde Enterprise Business Park PDD.
Sure, I understand. There's two moving parts here, and the Verde PDD is reliant upon, because of its terms, reliant upon the UDC that was in effect then. My question is, doesn't council have the authority to change that?
I think Brian can help better answer that.
So council can't fix it through a UDC amendment. There's not a way to do it that way. The other option would be is council, in theory, could fix it through a city-initiated rezone of those properties, which I think from a staff perspective seems more problematic. It almost sort of raises more questions than it sort of solves with the property owners. And so thus staff said, why don't we try the variance request? Again, I think this was staff trying to be helpful, you know, for the property owners and a little bit with BOA, because as you said, every one of these comes forward. The board's generally approved it for those reasons, but what it means is sort of this cost, this delay, this uncertainty for the property owner. And so this seemed to be the most palatable way to fix it. It's not the only way. Again, council could do a city-initiated rezone of those properties, but they can't do it through a UDC amendment.
And with all due respect,
No, that's okay.
I don't mean to question
No,
the background on
I think
this.
that's certainly valid. Again, I think staff thought, here's a way to kind of streamline it. Let's run it up the flagpole, if you will. I think if the board says, you know, well, I appreciate that, we'd still rather look at these on a case-by-case basis, that's certainly fine with staff. I think it was a valid question to ask, but I don't think staff is standing up here pounding on the podium saying, oh, you really have to approve this thing, da-da-da-da-da. I think that was our thought. So if the commission says, you know, we appreciate that, staff just work with people to try to get them in as quickly as possible, but we'd still like to consider them on a case-by-case basis, that's certainly fine with us.
And just a little background of my concern here, and I was going to ask, my next question is, has this been vetted, this idea been vetted by the city attorney? And the reason I ask that is I question whether we have the authority necessarily to lay a blanket variance for something that's not even before our board.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we've touched it with the city attorney. Lisa, do you know if we've run it past? Yeah, so if you wanted, you could certainly table it. We can run those traps and then come back to you with it. That would certainly put mine, because there's not a rush on this one. So that, from staff, I think makes perfect sense. If you want to table it, let us bounce off the city, we'll come back with you there. That's a good point. We'd certainly support that in hindsight. I think that makes sense.
Well, I'll wait to make a motion until other questions are asked.
Are there any other questions?
The only question I had, does this sure it up going forward, or does it have to, do they have to come back each time for each individual?
So if this went through, it would sort of solve it for everyone. But again, it's not a huge burden to just run folks through on each time. It's what we've been doing, as you said, for the last 10 years. We've been doing a lot of these, so that's certainly not an issue. So we're fine if you want to table it. We'll go back, run the traps on it, and then come back to you from there.
So, so the blanket variance, there, as far as any legal implications, That's been vetted.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's not a legal issue to the broad variance. I think the point I would have is, can the city, not as the property owner, request the variance would be the technical point. But there's not necessarily an issue with, because of the notices, granting a variance for the same thing to multiple properties. I think Board Member McElroy has the point, does the city have effectively standing to come in and request a variance for these other properties? But certainly, one of the things to keep in mind is when the variance is granted, it's granted for that property. And so that sign can change out and still meet and still has the benefit of that variance. So there isn't an issue with multiple properties in the variance, because inherently variances are blanket, if you will. It's whatever the particular provision is, that's what the variance is for, and that runs with the land. But I think Commissioner McElroy has a good point, is does the city have standing to submit the variance on the behalf of the property owners? And that's what I'd like to check.
Where I'm at is the idea of rights and privileges. So everyone in that PDD does not have the right that every other PDD has that's coming under a later thing. So in essence, they have fewer privileges on their signage.
I wouldn't go that far, because I can't say what every PDD did. You know, again, you would have to look at each PDD, and there could be a PDD that's more restrictive than the sign code. So I wouldn't go as far to say there's not another PDD with a similar thing. I think what we have is I certainly say we don't have another PDD where this is proven problematic, but there certainly could be a PDD that has a similar provision or a provision of the same effect. It's just not proven problematic because, again, it doesn't have as many properties as part of it and doesn't have the turnover of tenants and new buildings still being constructed.
Okay, if not, do I hear a motion?
I'd like to make a motion, Chairman. I would ask, I'd make the motion to, and move to table this request. I don't have the number in front of me there, but you got it there. With two questions to be answered, this to be reviewed by the city attorney with two questions that I have to be answered. Is it proper for the city to be the applicant in this situation, especially considering there's not a particular event before us? Number one. And then number two, does the Board of Adjustment have the authority then, even if it's the city attorney determines that it is proper for the city to be the applicant, does the Board of Adjustment have authority to grant a blanket variance when there's not a particular item before the board? I think of the word here, an actual issue.
Okay, I have a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second with the idea that we will table this item until the attorney has a chance to review and bring that back to us. Take a vote, left to right, please.
Before the vote, may I ask a question to Mr. James?
I think, point of order, I think we need to take the vote.
After we take the vote. Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Right. So basically what we've done, we've approved the motion as it was stated, and we will have the attorney take a look at the items and then return it back to us. So at this point, that's where it is carried right
And
now.
I can certainly chat with Board Member Hayward after the meeting to answer his question.
Okay. All right. Okay, at this point, moving on to announcements by the members, and that would be city community events attended and to be attended, starting with Mark.
Nothing to add here. Thank you.
I just want to congratulate the city again for putting together a great jubilee and a parade, and it's always a good time, and I look forward to this time of year here in Schertz.
Just I attended the Independence Day Parade, and I don't say 4th of July because actions happen that cause it to be an Independence Day, not a 4th of July as a date on the calendar.
Same as those great 4th of July event, probably roughly my 50th or so attending. So great job by the city. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. At this point, announcement by the city staff. Okay, we have nothing by the city staff, so we consider this at 6:58, Board of Adjustment to be adjourned. Thank you.